The decision had already been made. No one in the chamber said it out loud, but everyone could see it coming. The vote board hovered above the circular floor, a perfect arc of glowing panels, each one representing a civilization, a history, an entire world. One by one, they turned red. Not all at once. That would have been easier to accept. This was slower, deliberate, measured. The first light shifted quietly, almost politely. A soft pulse of crimson where there had once been neutral white. Then another. And another. No raised voices. No outrage. Just silence and color. By the time the 10th light turned, everyone understood what the final result would be. By the time the 20th did, no one was pretending otherwise. And when the last light finally changed, there was no sound at all. 31 civilizations. 31 decisions. All the same. At the center of the chamber, Ambassador Thalen did not move. He stood at the speaker's platform, hands folded behind his back, posture perfectly aligned with centuries of diplomatic training. His species had evolved in deep ocean pressure zones. Stillness was not just discipline, it was instinct. But even he could feel it. The shift. Not in the room. In meaning. They had not been rejected with anger. They had not been denied with cruelty. This was worse. They had been evaluated, analyzed, measured, reduced to variables in a system that had already decided the outcome before the discussion began. The delegate from the Kareth Union had spoken the longest. Tall, narrow, voice smooth and precise, he had presented projections that stretched decades into the future. Resource curves, population strain, integration instability. He never said, "We will not help them." He didn't have to. He simply proved that helping them did not make sense. Others followed. Different species, different voices. Same conclusion. Too many. Too sudden. Too complicated. By the time the final speaker finished, the chamber had already agreed with itself. The vote was just formality. Above them, 31 red lights confirmed it. Thalen's gaze remained fixed forward, but his secondary eyelids lowered slightly, a reflex he had not been able to suppress. Behind him, in the upper gallery, his people were watching. Nearly 12 million survivors. What remained of a civilization that had once spanned 3 systems? Their star was dying. Not violently. Not in some dramatic explosion that could be outrun or fought against. It was collapsing inward. Slowly. Inevitably. Every calculation they had run said the same thing. Within a year, their homeworld would be uninhabitable. Within 2, it would be gone entirely. They had not panicked. They had done everything correctly. Formal requests. Proper channels. Full transparency. They had submitted population data, resource estimates, integration proposals. They had offered labor, knowledge, cultural exchange, anything that might make the decision easier. They had followed every rule the galaxy claimed to value. And now, they had their answer. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, signaling the conclusion of the vote. No applause. No commentary. Just quiet acknowledgement, as if something routine had just been completed. Thalen finally exhaled. It was controlled. Measured. But it carried weight. Because this was the moment it became real. Not a possibility. Not a risk. A certainty. Behind him, one of the younger delegates shifted, unable to remain still any longer. Another lowered their head. A third stared upward at the vote board as if the colors might still change. They didn't. They wouldn't. At the far edges of the chamber, smaller delegations were already gathering their things. Conversations began, low, contained, already moving on to the next matter of importance. Because for them, this was over. But for Thalen's people, this was the beginning of the end. He straightened slightly, preparing to step away from the platform, to follow protocol, to exit with what dignity remained. And that was when a single hand rose from the observer section. Not high, not dramatic, just enough to be noticed. At first, no one reacted. Because observer delegations did not speak. They watched. They recorded. They left. That was the rule. But the hand remained raised. Still. Patient. Waiting. And slowly, the room began to notice. The hand did not lower. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The chamber remained suspended in that strange, post-decision quiet, where everything important had already been decided and nothing new was supposed to begin. Then the session moderator noticed. A thin, pale figure seated at the central console turned slightly, eyes narrowing as they scanned the observer gallery. "Observer delegation," they said carefully, their voice carrying just enough to cut through the low background movement. "The session has concluded." The hand remained raised. Not higher, not insistent, just steady. "I am aware," a voice replied. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Something about the tone, calm, precise, completely unhurried, caused several nearby conversations to stop mid-sentence. The moderator hesitated. That, more than anything, drew attention. Hesitation was rare here. Procedures were clear. Boundaries were understood. "Identify yourself," the moderator said. The woman stood. From a distance, there was nothing remarkable about her. Average height. Neutral posture. A simple dark jacket with a small insignia on the shoulder. Blue, green, and white arranged in a pattern most in the chamber didn't immediately recognize. But it wasn't her appearance that held attention. It was the way she stood. Not defensive. Not aggressive. Just certain. "Director Ilara Vance," she said. "Earth Interstellar Resettlement Authority." A few heads turned. Not many. Earth was known, technically. A minor participant in council affairs. Limited territory. Minimal influence. A species still considered new. The moderator checked their console briefly, confirming something. "Director Vance," they said, more cautiously now. "Earth holds observer status only. You are not recognized for formal contribution in this session." "I'm not making a contribution to the session," Vance replied. She paused. Not for effect. Just long enough to make sure the next words landed cleanly. "I'm making an offer." That did it. The room shifted. Not loudly. Not chaotically. But attention, real attention, locked in. At the central platform, Ambassador Thalen turned slightly for the first time since the vote had ended. The moderator's fingers moved quickly across their console. "Under what provision?" they asked. "Article 7, Vance said. "Open Settlement Accords. Subsection 3. There was a flicker of recognition across a few faces now. Quiet exchanges. Subtle glances. The moderator checked again. Slower this time. "Proceed," they said. Vance inclined her head once. Then she spoke. "Earth will accept full resettlement of the displaced population." Silence. Not the passive silence from before. This one had weight. A sharp, immediate absence of sound, as if the entire chamber had collectively paused to verify what it had just heard. From the Kareth delegation, one figure leaned forward slightly. "Clarify," he said. Vance didn't look at him. "All 12 million, she said. "Full transfer. Full integration support. Immediate coordination upon approval." The Kareth delegate stared at her. "You are proposing," he said slowly, "to absorb an unallocated population of that magnitude into a system that has not submitted capacity projections for review." "Yes." No hesitation. No adjustment. Just, yes. A ripple moved through the chamber now. Not loud, but undeniable. The moderator spoke again, more firmly this time. "Director Vance, such an offer requires." "I've already filed the documentation," she said. She lifted a small data pad. "Pre-submitted under Article 7 provisions. Signed, verified, and time-stamped prior to this session." That landed harder than anything else. Because it meant one thing. She hadn't decided this just now. She had come here already planning to do it. The Kareth delegate's expression shifted, just slightly. "You prepared this, before the vote concluded." Vance finally looked in his direction. "I prepared it before the vote started." That silence returned. Deeper this time. More complicated. At the central platform, Thalen turned fully now, his gaze locking onto the human in the gallery. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. But something passed between them anyway. Recognition. Not of species. Of intent. The moderator cleared their throat. This proposal, they said, carefully regaining control of the room, will require full council acknowledgement and procedural validation before. Of course, Vance said. She lowered the data pad. We're ready. No speech. No persuasion. No attempt to convince anyone. Just readiness. That, more than anything, unsettled the room. Because everyone else had spent hours explaining why something couldn't be done. And this one had simply decided that it would be. At the Vorin section, a broad-shouldered delegate leaned toward his counterpart. She expects approval, he murmured. His counterpart didn't answer immediately. They were watching Vance. No, they said finally. A pause. I don't think she does. Across the chamber, conversations began again, but different now. Sharper. Focused. Not on the refugees. On Earth. On capacity. On intent. On risk. At the center, Thalen stepped away from the platform at last. But he didn't leave. Instead, he turned, slowly, deliberately, and faced the observer gallery. Faced her. For the first time since the vote, something changed in his posture. Not hope. Not yet. But something close enough to be dangerous. The chamber did not return to normal. It tried. Procedures resumed. Delegates spoke in controlled tones. The moderator outlined the next steps with practiced neutrality. But something had shifted beneath it all. The decision had been made. And then, unmade. Not officially. Not yet. But the certainty was gone. In its place was something far more unstable. Possibility. Ambassador Thalen did not approach the human immediately. Protocol required distance. Time. Formal acknowledgement before informal contact. But protocol had already begun to feel insufficient. Instead, he watched. From across the chamber. From the moment Director Vance lowered her hand to the moment the session formally closed, she did not move much. She spoke briefly with a member of her delegation. Quiet, efficient, already discussing logistics as if the outcome were inevitable. As if 12 million lives were not a question, but a task. That alone was enough to unsettle him. Behind him, his own delegation had begun to gather. Voices low. Controlled. But not calm. They cannot sustain that number. Their system capacity isn't publicly verified. What if this is conditional? What if it isn't? Thalen raised one hand slightly. The voices stopped. Not because he demanded silence, but because they trusted him to think. And he was thinking. Carefully. Because there was something about this that did not align. Not with the council. Not with the patterns he had spent a lifetime learning. No one offered something like this. Without reason. He found her after. Not immediately. The chamber took time to empty. Delegates moved in clusters, conversations forming and dissolving like currents in shallow water. By the time Thalen crossed the floor, the observer section was nearly clear. Director Vance was still there, reviewing something on her data pad. Alone. She looked up before he spoke. Not surprised. Just aware. Ambassador, she said. Her voice was the same as before. Even. Unaffected. You knew I would come, Thalen said. Yes. No hesitation. That unsettled him more than anything else so far. You prepared your offer, he said slowly, before the council had spoken. Yes. You committed your world to a decision, before knowing the outcome. Yes. Each answer came clean. Direct. Without defense. Thalen studied her face. Human expressions were difficult. Subtle in ways his people were not designed to interpret. But there were patterns. And this did not feel like deception. Which raised a different problem. Why? He asked. It was not an accusation. It was a calculation. Vance considered him for a moment. Not searching for an answer. Choosing one. Because you asked for help, she said. Thalen did not respond immediately. That is not sufficient reasoning, he said. No, she agreed. It's not sufficient for the council. A pause. But it is for us. There it was again. That difference. Not louder. Not stronger. Just incompatible. You understand, Thalen said carefully, that my people cannot offer you anything of strategic value. I know. No territory. I know. No resources that justify this scale of investment. I know. Each confirmation removed another explanation, until there were none left. Thalen's secondary eyelids lowered slightly again, a sign of cognitive strain. Then this is risk, he said. Yes. Significant risk. Yes. And you accept it, without guarantee of return. Vance tilted her head slightly. Not without return, she said. That caught his attention. For what purpose, he asked. She held his gaze. For the outcome. That was not an answer. Not a logical one. And yet, she seemed satisfied with it. Thalen exhaled slowly. There is something else, he said. Vance waited. We have received preliminary data, he continued, regarding your transit fleet. That was the first time something shifted. Not in her posture. In the space around the conversation. Subtle. But present. What kind of data? She asked. Configuration reports, Thalen said. Escort patterns. Structural signatures. A pause. Your ships are armed. Not a question. A statement. Vance did not look away. Yes. The word landed heavier than expected. You are aware, Thalen said slowly, that we requested resettlement. Not military intervention. I am. Then why bring weapons? There it was. The first real fracture in the narrative. If this was compassion, why did it arrive armed? Vance didn't answer immediately. Not because she didn't have one. Because she was deciding how much to say. Finally, there are regions between here and your system, she said, that are not as regulated as the Council prefers to believe. Thalen's posture shifted slightly. We are aware of transit risks. Not all of them, Vance said. That was new. What does that mean? It means, she said evenly, you're not the only ones moving through that space. A pause. And not everyone out there respects Council decisions. The implication settled slowly, heavier with each second. You expect interference, Thalen said. I plan for it. Another difference. Not hope. Preparation. Thalen looked at her for a long moment. Re-evaluating. Adjusting. Because the shape of this decision was changing. It was no longer just unexpected. It was layered. You are offering us safety, he said. Yes. With conditions we do not yet fully understand. Vance didn't react to that. Then understand them, she said. Simple. Direct. Uncomplicated. And somehow, more unsettling than anything else she had said. From the far side of the chamber, one of Thalen's aides approached, hesitating just enough to signal urgency without disruption. Ambassador, they said quietly, we are receiving external confirmation. Thalen did not look away from Vance. Of what? The aide swallowed slightly. The human fleet has already entered staging positions. That landed. Hard. You deployed before approval, Thalen said. Yes. Why? This time, there was no pause at all. Because if you say yes, Vance said, we don't want you waiting. Silence. Not empty. Not passive. Something else entirely. Because now the question wasn't, why are the humans helping? It was, how far ahead have they already decided to go? The fleet arrived without announcement. No dramatic broadcast. No declaration of intent. One moment, the outer sensors were clear. And the next, they weren't. The first to notice were the long-range operators aboard the refugee carriers. A faint signal. Then another. Shapes resolving at the very edge of detection range. Contact, one of them said, voice tightening despite training. Multiple signatures, holding position. Within seconds, the information spread. Across 47 vessels, patched cargo ships, retrofitted transports, aging hulls held together by necessity more than design. Tired ships, carrying tired people. And now, something new was out there. Yulin pressed closer to the observation panel, her breath fogging slightly against the transparent alloy. She was young by her species standards, old enough to understand what danger looked like, but not yet practiced at hiding the reaction. "What are they?" she asked. No one answered immediately, because no one knew. Then the data updated. Formation, mass, configuration, and finally, identification. "Human," someone said. The word moved through the room like a shift in gravity. The first ships came into visual range minutes later. Not fast, not aggressive, deliberate. There were 8 of them at the center, large, angular structures moving with steady precision. Supply vessels, by the look of them. Reinforced hulls. Modular design. Around them, smaller ships. 7. Positioned in a loose outer ring. And those were different. "They're armed," Yulin whispered. Not because she had been told. Because she could see it. Long structures mounted beneath the hulls. Clean lines. Mechanical symmetry. Not hidden. Not concealed. Visible. "Why would they bring weapons?" someone behind her asked. No one answered that either. On the central command vessel, Ambassador Thalen stood at the main display, watching the formation resolve in full. They moved like a single system. Not rigid, but coordinated. Each ship adjusting subtly, maintaining distance, maintaining coverage, like something practiced. Like something that had done this before. A signal request appeared. Clean. Direct. No encryption barriers. No layered authentication challenges. Just a standard open channel. Thalen hesitated for half a second. Then, accept. The screen shifted. A human appeared. Older. Weathered features. Skin marked by exposure to environments Thalen could only estimate. But the eyes. Steady. Focused. Not scanning the room. Not assessing threat. Just present. "Ambassador Thalen," the man said. "Colonel Arik Vance. Earth Resettlement Escort Command." His voice was calm. Not formal in the way council delegates were formal. Different. More practical. "We're here to bring your people in," he continued. "Safely." No speech. No welcome. Just the objective. Thalen inclined his head slightly. "You arrived before final authorization," he said. "Yes." No apology. No justification. Just acknowledgement. Behind Thalen, several of his advisors exchanged glances. Yulin was still watching from the side corridor, eyes fixed on the screen. "You are heavily armed," Thalen said. "Yes." Again. No avoidance. That was not part of the request. "I know." A pause. Short. Controlled. Then. "It's part of the route." That was new. Thalen's gaze sharpened slightly. "Explain." Colonel Vance didn't shift posture. Didn't glance at anything off-screen. Just answered. "There have been 3 confirmed interceptions in this sector in the last cycle," he said. "Unregistered groups targeting slow-moving fleets." A flicker of movement behind him. Someone passing data. He didn't look. "They don't announce themselves," he continued. "They don't negotiate. They take what they can and leave what they don't." Silence settled over the command deck. Thalen absorbed that. Carefully. "You expect an attack. I prepare for one." That pattern again. Not fear. Not prediction. Preparation. Yulin felt something shift in her chest. Not comfort. Not yet. But something else. "We did not request military protection," Thalen said. "No," Vance agreed. "You didn't." A beat. "We brought it anyway." That should have been alarming. It should have raised resistance. Concern. But the way he said it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a decision already made. "Your fleet will maintain distance," Thalen said after a moment. "Understood." You will not interfere with internal operations. Understood. You will not. Ambassador, Vance said. Not interrupting. Just aligning the conversation. My job is simple. That got everyone's attention. Nothing touches your ships, he said. A pause. If something does, it goes through us first. Silence. Heavy. Different. Because that was not a diplomatic statement. That was a line. The channel closed shortly after. No ceremony. No extended negotiation. Just confirmation. Outside. The formation shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough. The 7 escort ships moved. Sliding outward. Then inward. Adjusting angles. Until they weren't beside the refugee fleet anymore. They were around it. Yulin watched it happen in real time. The positioning. The spacing. The way each ship aligned not just with the fleet, but with each other. They're blocking something, she said quietly. No one corrected her. Because she was right. Hours passed. Nothing happened. No attacks. No signals. Just movement. Steady. Controlled. And then, a new contact appeared. Unidentified vessel, a sensor operator called out. Vectoring in from outer range. The room tightened instantly. Configuration. Small. Fast. Not broadcasting. Yulin felt her hands clench. There it was. The thing the human had prepared for. The unknown ship didn't rush. Didn't charge. It approached at an angle. Slow. Careful. Like it was measuring. Before anyone aboard the refugee fleet could react. The human ships moved. Not fast. Not aggressive. Smooth. Precise. All 7 escorts rotated as one. And placed themselves directly between the unknown vessel and the refugees. No weapons fired. No warnings issued. No dramatic escalation. Just position. Yulin stared at the display. They didn't even ask what it wants, she said. No, Thalen replied quietly. He was watching too. Very carefully. They didn't. The unknown ship held position. For a long time. Long enough for tension to build. For fear to settle in. For questions to multiply. And then, it turned. No attack. No message. No confrontation. Just a silent decision. To leave. The moment it disappeared from sensors, the human formation didn't celebrate. Didn't react. Didn't even change position immediately. They just stayed there, holding the line. Yulin slowly stepped back from the display. Her thoughts weren't clear. They weren't simple. But one thing, one small thing, had changed. She looked at the human ships again. At the weapons. At the positioning. At the silence. They didn't attack, she said. No, Thalen replied. Another pause. Then, they didn't need to. The journey did not feel like a rescue. It felt organized. That was the first thing Yulin noticed after the encounter. Not relief. Not safety. Structure. Schedules appeared across the refugee network within hours of departure. Clear. Simple. Translated into every known dialect within the fleet. Docking rotations. Medical check intervals. Nutrient distribution cycles. Everything. Timed. They already mapped our needs, one of the senior coordinators said quietly. Yulin didn't understand at first. Then she saw it. The patterns. The way each instruction aligned not just with efficiency, but with their habits. Their limitations. Their biology. They studied us, she said. No one corrected her. The first transfer happened on the second day. A damaged carrier, one of the oldest in the fleet, flagged a structural instability warning. Normally, that would mean slowing down, falling behind, becoming vulnerable. This time, it didn't. Human vessel requesting proximity, came the signal. No urgency, no alarm, just procedure. Yulin watched from the observation deck as one of the larger human ships adjusted course. It didn't rush. Didn't push engines to maximum. Just aligned. Matched velocity. Closed the distance with precise, almost effortless control. "They're going to tow it?" someone asked. But they didn't. Instead, sections of the human ship moved. At first, Yulin thought it was a trick of perspective. Then the structure shifted again. Panels separating. Segments extending outward in controlled, mechanical precision. "They're reconfiguring," she whispered. The human vessel didn't just approach the damaged carrier. It adapted to it. Within minutes, a docking bridge formed, not forced, not improvised, but shaped to match the exact damage profile of the refugee ship. No scraping metal. No collision risk. Just fit. "They built that for us," someone said. Yulin shook her head slightly. "No," she said. "They built something that could become what we needed." That realization stayed with her. Long after the transfer was complete. Long after the damaged ship was stabilized, reinforced, and quietly integrated into a safer position within the fleet. This wasn't reaction. This was preparation. Days passed. The pattern continued. Food shipments arrived before shortages were reported. Medical teams requested access to patients who had not yet been flagged as critical. Environmental adjustments were suggested, then implemented. Before discomfort turned into complaint. "They keep solving problems before we feel them," Yulin said one evening. She was standing beside Ambassador Thalen again, watching the human ships drift in perfect formation around them. Always present. Never intrusive. "They are not reacting," Thalen said quietly. Yulin glanced at him. "They're anticipating." Thalen didn't answer immediately, because he was thinking the same thing. And that was not something the council taught. On the 5th day, they arrived. Earth did not look like a solution. At least, not at first. Yulin expected something grand. Something that justified the confidence, the preparation, the certainty. Instead, she saw a world. Blue, green, cloud-covered in parts, scarred in others. Alive. "It looks unfinished," she said. Thalen didn't correct her, because she wasn't wrong. But as the fleet moved closer, details began to resolve. Structures. Not cities. Not in the way she understood them. These were different. Spread across coastlines, valleys, and elevated plateaus. Clusters of habitation zones. Modular. Expandable. Connected by transit lines that hadn't existed in any public Earth data. "They weren't there before," one of the analysts said, voice tight with disbelief. Yulin leaned forward, watching. Ships were already waiting. Not military. Not escort vessels. Transports. Hundreds of them. Positioned in orbit. In atmosphere. Across landing zones that had been cleared. Prepared. And built. Before they had even said yes. "They did this already," Yulin whispered. No one argued. Because the evidence was right there. As the first refugee ship entered atmosphere, something else became clear. There was no chaos. No last-minute adjustments. No visible scrambling. Everything was already in place. Landing corridors opened with perfect timing. Guidance signals locked in before manual override was even considered. Atmospheric entry paths were calculated down to fractions of a degree. "They knew exactly when we would arrive," Yulin said. Thalen's voice was quieter now. "They made sure of it." The first landing was smooth. Too smooth. No turbulence. No emergency corrections. No strain on the aging hull. Just descent. When the doors opened, Yulin expected noise. Confusion. Crowds. Instead, she found space. Wide landing zones. Marked pathways. Clear directions. And beyond them, structures. Homes. Not temporary shelters. Not emergency housing. Homes. Built at scale. But not identical. Each unit slightly different. Adjusted. Modified. For different needs, Yulin said. She didn't know how she knew that. But she did. As she stepped forward, something else registered. The air. Adjusted. Balanced. Not perfectly Earth-like, but close enough. They calibrated the atmosphere, someone behind her said. Yulin looked around. At the structures. At the pathways. At the systems already running. At the absence of panic. They didn't wait for us, she said. Thalen stood beside her. Watching everything. Processing. Recalculating. No, he said quietly. A long pause. They were waiting. Yulin turned her gaze back toward the sky. The human ships were still there. Still watching. Still holding position. Not celebrating. Not claiming anything. Just present. And for the first time since this began, the question changed. Not, why are they helping? But, how long have they been preparing to? The systems worked. That was the first official report. Integration timelines were ahead of projection. Resource distribution remained stable. Medical adaptation success rates exceeded every initial estimate. By every measurable standard, the operation was a success. The council reconvened. Not out of obligation. Out of necessity. Because something had happened here that did not fit existing models. Ambassador Thalen stood once again at the central platform. But this time, the room felt different. Quieter. Not with indifference. With attention. They succeeded, one delegate said. Not questioning. Not debating. Stating. They overcommitted resources, another added. Their expansion rate is aggressive. And yet stable, a third voice said. That was the problem. It shouldn't have been. Thalen listened. To the analysis. To the concerns. To the attempts to turn something simple into something explainable. Finally, he spoke. They did not act according to council logic, he said. That much, everyone agreed on. They committed before confirmation, he continued. They deployed before authorization. They prepared, without guarantee. A pause. And yet, he said, they did not fail. Silence followed. Because that was the part no one could resolve. One of the senior delegates leaned forward slightly. Then we must ask the obvious question, they said. Thalen looked at them. Yes, he replied. Why? The word settled into the room. Not as curiosity. As a problem. Thalen considered it. He had asked that question himself. More than once. And every answer he had received had not satisfied the council. But they had satisfied him. He stepped back slightly from the platform. And for a moment, he did something unexpected. He didn't present data. He didn't cite projections. He didn't reference policy. He told them what he had seen. They did not wait for permission, he said. They did not calculate return. They did not negotiate advantage. A pause. They prepared, because they decided to. That line alone shifted something. Around the chamber, subtle reactions. Not agreement, but recognition. A delegate from the outer system spoke next. That is not sustainable behavior. Thalen nodded once. No, he said. Another pause. But it is effective. That landed. Because effectiveness was the one language the council respected. And that still does not explain it, the same delegate pressed. Thalen's gaze moved across the room. Slowly, carefully. They explained it, he said. A few heads turned. They just didn't explain it in a way we're used to hearing. Silence again. This time. Expectant. Thalen exhaled once. Then, he repeated the words. Not his. Theirs. When we asked them why, he said quietly, they told us something very simple. A pause. And then, they said. Another pause. Long enough to matter. If we can help, we don't wait to be asked twice. No one spoke. Because there was nothing to argue with. Nothing to optimize. Nothing to reduce. Just a decision. Thalen let the silence sit. Then added one final line. They do not see compassion as a resource to manage. A beat. They see it as a responsibility to act. This time, the silence didn't feel uncertain. It felt different. Not resolved, but changed. Across the chamber, no one moved to counter. No one rushed to respond. Because for the first time, the question wasn't, why would anyone do this? It was, why wouldn't we?